What is up, internet friends? Hey, it's Jeff here, and I'm back in the basement for another episode of Basement Bartender. So the last video I made was kind of the intro video. You know, I'm a huge old-fashioned freak, right? So I love old fashions, everything about them. I'm an old-fashioned guy, so I like old fashions. I love the history of the cocktail and a bunch of other things about it. But I also love the new riffs on old fashions. Again, I was talking to a buddy. I don't want to beat a dead horse on this, but an old fashioned is 3 ingredients typically. And I say typically, it depends on who you're talking to, but if you're talking to a whiskey purist or an old fashioned purist like myself, I will tell you it's a base spirit, it's a simple syrup or sugar water, whatever you want to call it, and then bitters. And so, you know, we get these guys that are making cocktails, they're putting a bunch of stuff in the whiskey and mixing it with things and adding stuff to it. To me, that is no longer an old-fashioned. It is something else. And so, whenever I talk about old fashions, I'm talking about the 3 ingredients, right? And so what I want to show today is one of my favorites, just outside of, you know, my typical standard old fashioned, which to me is one of the best I've ever fucking had, right? It's, again, Old Grandad 114 is my base spirit of choice. You can choose whatever. It's kind of a personal preference. For this especially, it works really, really well. It actually works really well for my standard old fashions because I make my own simple syrup, which, using demerara and a special ingredient that I mentioned in my other video, it's a little sweeter. I make my simple syrup a little sweeter. That's a mouthful. So the Old Grandad 114, being 114 proof, kind of balances really nice with that sweetness. And then depending on which bitters you're using and the orange and all that stuff, you got a pretty damn good old fashioned. I think it's the best I've ever had. And usually when I tell my friends that and I have people over, you know, I'm like, hey, I don't want to brag, but I make a really fucking good old-fashioned. And when I share it with them, they're like, oh, damn, this is actually really, really good. Like, way better than most that I've had at bars and high-end cocktail places. So I like to do riffs. Today, we're going to talk about the Smores Old Fashioned. And I've got a couple things here, a couple props, right? So I've got a box of Golden Grams and some Jet Puff marshmallow cream. And so what we do with those 2 things is we take the Golden Grams and the Old Grandad, and I basically put this in like a big Tupperware container. I think I use like five cups of Golden Grams, roughly, and a whole bottle of Old Grandad 114. I put it in a big Tupperware container, shake it up a little bit, and basically let it sit there at least 24 hours. You can do it 12, depends on the flavor. You know, if you mess around a few times with this, you'll get it to where you like it. I let mine sit for a full 24 hours, and every few hours I'll go and I'll like shake up or stir up the Golden Grams in the Tupperware. And the cool thing is, I don't have it down here with me, but I've got a strainer, so when you're ready, you know, you have to strain that out. And the cool thing is with Golden Grams, it doesn't like, they don't get super mushy and like disintegrate like you would think they would. They stay pretty much fully intact. You're going to get the cinnamon off of it, the sugar off of it a little bit, the flavor, so you need to strain it, right? So I've got a mesh cocktail strainer, there's a couple different ways I'll go over it, but first of all, I scoop all of the Golden Grams out with that mesh strainer, and I use my bar spoon to squish all of the liquid that I can get out of them, right? So I squish all of the liquid back into the container. I dump the Golden Grams in the garbage. I've thought about using them for something else, but I tasted them and they're fucking horrible. So throw those away. But you want to get all the liquid out. And then once you have the liquid, I take the bottle, the empty bottle, and I put a funnel, and I'll put a coffee filter in there. And I want to strain the liquid back into its own bottle, but I want to get all the stuff that comes out of it, the sugar and the cinnamon and all of that stuff, the sediment that has settled to the bottom. I want to get all of that out of there, so what I'm left with is basically just the whiskey again, but it's flavored with the Golden graham cracker flavor, and it is really, really good for this drink. With the Jet Puff marshmallow, you can use regular marshmallows. If I was going to do it, I'd probably buy the big ones. When I was looking at it, I was like, man, I don't need a bag of marshmallows. You know, I'm going to use like 3 or 4 of these things. I don't need a bag of marshmallows laying around my house that I'm just going to probably eat. I like keeping them in the freezer, by the way. You keep them in the freezer, they stay forever, and it's like you can grab it like a snack and eat it like a damn apple. So that's super cool. I just didn't want that, so I grabbed for $1.99 or whatever it was, some of this stuff, it stays forever. You can just put it in a cupboard. I think I use like 3 or 4 tablespoons, and what we use that for is when we're making our simple syrup. So I take my regular recipe for simple syrup, which is demerara and water, a big cup of demerara, 3/4 cup of water, and then 3 scoops of the Jet Puff marshmallow. And what I do with that, as it's coming to a boil and heating up, I'll go in there with my handy dandy flamethrower torch of some sort. I've got a couple little ones. I'll go in there with that, and actually I'll toast the marshmallow that's floating on the top of the simple syrup as it's starting to boil. I'll toast that marshmallow because it adds an extra level of flavor. And eventually that'll start dissolving and melting into the simple syrup. So I stir that up the best I can, get it to where it's basically boiling. The sugar's all dissolved, the marshmallow's kind of in there, it's still creamy. And then I'll stop that and then do the same thing. I'll filter that through a coffee filter, through a strainer, into a bunch of these little bottles. So that is the recipe, the things you're going to need for the recipe. I didn't want to make it because it's kind of it takes a little bit to do. But Golden Grams marshmallow, you make the simple syrup, you do the infused. I've got the infused bottle. I always take the labels off when I do my infused bottles so that I don't get them mixed up. So today we are going to make the S'mores Old Fashioned. We got our Old Fashioned glass. My last video I was talking about the ice cube and how this little clamp thing sucks for getting the ice cubes out. Tonight I'm using a sphere, which is supposed to be easier. This clamp, yeah, it does actually work pretty well for the sphere. Doesn't work at all for the square cubes. Really sucks, so I'm gonna have to either get new ones or figure that out. But I let my ice cube rest. I'll put it in there. Typically what we don't want to do is we don't want to pour the alcohol or any of this stuff on top of an ice cube directly coming out of a freezer, because it'll crack and it'll shatter your ice cube into a bunch of pieces. And if you want to stay fancy, you just let it sit for a bit. It does its thing, and then when we pour the stuff on top of it, it doesn't crack like that. So we go with a standard recipe, right? The 2 ounces of liquor, 2 ounces of the base spirit. Love that noise. 2 ounces, and then the simple syrup to taste. I've got it down to a science with my bar spoon pretty well. Again, this little jigger, the measuring thing, I don't love this one. I should probably get a new one. One side goes up to 1 ounce, the other side goes up to 1.5. I would love to have one that just goes up to 2 to make my life easier, but we're gonna do 2 1-ounce pours of the base spirit. It's funny, I was actually taught in a cocktail class the other day that when you're mixing things, you want to use all the cheap stuff first, so that if you screw something up and you have to dump it out, you're not losing your expensive liquor. In this case, the frickin' simple syrup, I don't want to say it's just as expensive, but it's more time consuming. So either way, I don't want to lose either of them. I will say that today, whenever I'm making myself a drink, I'll just mix everything in the glass. I'll do it right on top of the ice cube, mix it up, whatever. If I'm making 2 or more, like one for myself and my other friends, I'll do everything in the cocktail mixing container, so some mixing glass, so that I'm making more, or when I'm making more. But today we're just making one for myself, so I'm gonna do it directly in the glass. So I've got my spirit in there. I am going to do 2 bar spoons of the simple syrup. Just because I know that's roughly what I like to my taste. That, again, is a personal preference, so if you make it, especially because we're making it with the Old Granddad 114, if you find that it's still too strong, go ahead and add a little more of the simple syrup to it. The final ingredient that we're going to add is chocolate bitters. So we don't use normal bitters for this, like none of the Peychauds or any of that. I've got the Portland Bitters Project. They have this awesome, it's called Pitch Dark Cacao bitter, and I love it for these specifically. It's a dark chocolate, obviously, and typically I'll do like 5 drops. And that is that. So again, Portland Bitters Project, they're super good. You can use any chocolate bitter you want. There's a bunch out there. Just one I like. I wanted to try this one because honestly, I was made a different drink that I'll cover a different time, which is a cold brew old fashioned. And somebody put these super spice bitters in it from the Portland Bitter Project, and they were fucking delicious. So I wanted to try their chocolate version as well. So that is that. We've got our 3 ingredients in there, and we're basically done. So some people, on a typical old fashioned, you want to put your zest, your orange in there. On this one, I'm not going to do that. Some people like it. If you want to do that, that's cool. I don't think it needs it. But on a regular old fashioned, I always do the orange zest. You know, you express it, do the oil, wipe it around, all that. But on this one, it's meant to just taste like a s'more. So s'mores don't have oranges in them, in case you've never made s'mores before. So that's that. Let's give it a shot. Oh God, it's so damn good. It is so damn good. I could drink like 10 of these. It tastes like the cereal, and it hits you like a truck if you have too many of them. I can tell you from experience because you're using the old Granddad 114. So high proof, sweet, tastes like the cereal. Damn, it's good. Cheers, everybody. Stay tuned for the next video. I don't know what we're gonna make next, but that's coming at you soon. All right, guys.